What's good? Logan Murdock here with Real Ones. We have a really action-packed episode for you today. A lot of things going on. Thibs getting fired, NBA Finals preview, and then we have me and Howard Beck are talking to Joel Anderson and Bryan Curtis about Inside the NBA. All of that next on Real Ones. Hey, Cliff, play the theme music. What's poppin'? Real Ones. Logan Murdock here. Howard Beck over there. We already recorded a pod and we were ready to go. Howard was leaving Sacramento on his way to the Bay Area and not see me and then go to Oklahoma City from SFO. And he was already packed. And then we get the text of doom, not only for the person that we're about to talk to, but for us in general, because we had to record a topper for this podcast. And the reason why we're recording a topper for this podcast is because Tom Thibodeau has gotten fired by the New York Knicks.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. On the basketball court, the best players know when to pass. And off the court, you still need teammates who are there when it counts. That's where State Farm comes in. With agents and online tools to help you find the coverage you need, you can focus on what really matters, whether that's hitting game winners or just getting through the day. State Farm, with the assist, coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability and eligibility vary by state.
Okay, so I'll just go through with my reactions. We just go with your reaction really quickly, Beck. So my first reaction was I'm kind of surprised based on the run that the Knicks had. I was shocked because of the runs that the Knicks had that he got fired so soon, but I wasn't necessarily surprised by it. What are you thinking about this? Was this something in the works, you think? And we all thought that maybe a run could save him. Why didn't the Eastern Conference Finals run, save Tom Thibodeau's job ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, look, you set the table already, Logan. So just to make this very, very clear to the listeners, it is now 12:04 Pacific time on Tuesday. This happened within the last 7 or 8 minutes. So I've not made a single phone call, and we are going on the fly here. I am both surprised and not surprised at all. Obviously, I covered the Knicks for 9 years. I've been in New York for 21 years. I'm never surprised at anything the Knicks do, even if it seems irrational. And this one is not clear cut, to be clear. There's a case, as I'm sure we will hear, being made for firing Tom Thibodeau through the usual sources as the day unfolds. But listen, let's just back up. The Knicks were a laughingstock. The Knicks were a disaster for basically 20 years. With a few outlier seasons mixed in. The 5-year run that Tom Thibodeau just had is the best run they've had since the 90s. It's not even close. They were just in their first conference finals since 25 years ago. So, and they've had back-to-back 50-win seasons for the first time since the 90s. There's absolutely no question whatsoever that everything the Knicks are now, respectable, competent, competitive, feared, at times even, whatever they have become, it is due to a lot of different factors, including what Tom Thibodeau has done to instill this team with a certain kind of toughness. And it helps to go get Jalen Brunson. It helps to go get Josh Hart and everyone else that has been part of this era. But firing Thibodeau now, we can get into the granular stuff about this playoff run. But it does strike me, the part of it that's surprising is this is as good as the Knicks have been in a very long time. And his reward for it is to get shown the door after a conference finals loss that frankly shouldn't have been that shocking. We knew that the Pacers were capable of this. We knew that this series could go either way. I picked Knicks in 7, but I think as you and I had talked about on the side, I was really tempted to say Pacers in 6. No outcome in 6 or 7 games with either of them emerging was going to be surprising. They're a really good team. They're a very expensive team. And yes, they made a lot of moves that cost them assets and money and everything else to get Towns and Bridges last summer. But if you thought that they were somehow a lock for the finals or a championship, that would be insane. So I don't know, they haven't fallen short of anything here. They have achieved exactly what they should have achieved this season. No more, no less. And I don't know how that's the basis for firing Thibs.
That's what me and Cliff were talking about pre-pod or pre-segment, is just the fact that this reeks of another shoe to drop. Leon Rose obviously made the call on this. That's been reported in the last few minutes. this reeks of something that is similar to maybe Mike Malone, right? Where there might have been some infighting, maybe been some indecision. Because again, like the biggest thing that you want in the NBA, especially after you do better than expectations. I mean, we were talking about the Knicks not even being as good as last year's team throughout the season, right? It was kind of a punchline that they were going to lose to the Detroit Pistons. But you have this roster, veteran team roster. You have a coach that seems to have a culture that fits perfectly with New York and the style of play that New York likes from its teams. This seems like, and I'm speculating here, seems like it could be some infighting in the background for this to happen at this juncture of a season. Because I mean, even when Jalen Brunson was asked about it after they were eliminated, it was like, is that even a question to ask? And a lot of people were like, I mean, yeah, Brunson's right. Why would you ask him a question like that? And now you see why. I don't know if this is a good or bad move, because you have to see who they pick up, who the Knicks picks up, but it definitely messes with their continuity. It seems like a coach that the locker room seemed to like. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, and this is one of the reasons why I thought whatever the criticisms of Thibs were, right? Not developing the bench enough, running his starters into the ground, rotation decisions in the playoffs itself, anything that you, and especially that Knicks fans pointed to. And look, there's definitely been a large segment of Knicks fans who have been gunning for Thibs' dismissal for a while, right? Knicks fans weren't always happy with him despite the success that they've had the last 5 years. And the thing that I thought would maybe save Thibs, if the front office or ownership were thinking along the same lines, is, well, he seems really aligned with Jalen Brunson. Like I feel like they're kind of wired the same. And I don't want to speculate on whether Jalen Brunson was consulted on this, because we just never know. Every organization operates differently. Every star operates differently. I would just say, as I would always say in these situations, it's insane if you didn't consult your franchise star before dismissing the coach. But I thought those two were pretty tied together. And I thought for all kinds of reasons, like he would continue. I did not, like I say, I'm a little surprised. The Leon Rose statement just came out, team president of the Knicks, who, Leon came in 5 years ago himself in the middle of COVID, was hired without any experience himself, right? Coming from CAA as an agent, took over, a lot of skepticism, including from me, and he's built it out pretty well. And Thibs was his hire. So this is the first coach that he's hired and first coach he's now fired. Not to be overlooked in all of this too, is Thibs was, of course, a CAA client himself. Leon says, quote, "Our organization is singularly focused on winning a championship for our fans. This pursuit led us to the difficult decision to inform Tom Thibodeau that we've decided to move in another direction. We can't thank Tom enough for pouring his heart and soul into each and every day of being the New York Knicks head coach. He led us not only with class and professionalism for the past 5 seasons, but also to tremendous success on the court with 4 playoff berths and 4 playoff series victories. Ultimately, we made the decision we feel is best for our organization moving forward. Tom will always be part of our Knicks family, and we truly wish him nothing but the best in the future." So nothing real revealing there.
Very vague statement, very Knicksian statement.
But that's like all teams issue ambiguous statements like this that are always like, "Thank you for your service, bye-bye." We're not going to hear anything more than that either officially, because Leon Rose doesn't do media, doesn't do press conferences with independent media. He barely even talks to MSG Network. So I don't expect that we're going to hear anything officially more to elaborate on this or to explain how, what the basis for it was. It'll all have to be unnamed sources. But my guess is there were concerns with the rotation and the lack of development of the bench, and then the on-the-fly suddenly promotion of that bench in tight games against the Pacers, where suddenly they desperately needed them. And I do think there were some, as there are with every coach in front office, Logan, there were definitely some disagreements along the way over the last 5 years. There were guys that the front office brought in that especially some of the younger players that Thibs did not invest as much time in because he was playing Alec Burks or Elfrid Payton. Like he's definitely a coach who wants his, he loves his vets, and he wants to win every game. And he wants to have the best record possible, even if it's the expense of guys playing big minutes and young guys not getting reps. Like, that is the way he's wired. But you know that when you hire him.
I was going to say, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it. But the question that I would have is, okay, say you're the Knicks front office and you hire Thibs, I mean, because of the CAA connection, but also because Thibs, one, is a damn good coach, and also he seems like the guy that can teach winning habits. Now, now that may not be, that may not bring the bench along. That may not make everybody feel good about the rotations and the minutes that are being allocated. But he seems to be like one of those. Maybe this is what he is for this team. A bridge to something better, right? I mean, similar to, we've seen that from Mark Jackson. We've seen that from other coaches who can get a team to a point. Maybe that is probably what we're seeing here, Howard. I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, right?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what he did. Maybe that is what it is, that Leon Rose was like, okay, he's gotten us to this point, but there are glaring things that we just don't agree with, that we need to get somebody in here that we do agree with in terms of the rotations, and maybe having a transcendent view, because at this point, Thibs is who he is. As an older coach, he is kind of in his ways, and he is kind of that type of guy that is going to play guys 47 minutes a game and win every game. And he builds good habits within a team, but there's always a ceiling to that. And also, like, this team isn't as good as it was. It might not look the same next year, and it might need a different coach to oversee all of that.
If there's an analogy to some of the past changes we've seen, even like, Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr, like Mark Jackson got the Warriors to become a 50-win team, mostly on the basis of defense. And then Kerr came in with his staff and unlocked the offense with just more innovation and more dynamism, more movement. And it's funny because Thibs is considered a defense first coach, but when they swapped out some of the pieces from last season to this season, they became more of an offense first team, where they were like, top 5, top 10, wherever they were in offensive efficiency, but they were more middle of the pack defensively. And all that said, they still lacked a certain offensive dynamism. Like, Jalen Brunson's pretty ball dominant. Is that Jalen Brunson and just catering to him, or is that Thibs and the way he's designing things offensively? Like, there's a lot of chicken and egg stuff in these things. And I do think, especially when they went out and got Mikal Bridges and traded like every last draft pick they had to get him, Bridges can do things with the ball in his hands. He can initiate the offense some. Like, we saw that in Phoenix, we saw it in Brooklyn, and it seemed to me like they kind of pigeonholed him earlier in the season. So I do think there's a case potentially to be made that a different coach with a different offensive style or mindset, or maybe a little bit more innovative, might get more out of the current group if you keep this group together. But that's not guaranteed. And I will just say, again, like, I'm not here to defend the decision or to defend Thibs. We're working through this in real time. I will just say, for an organization that has suffered greatly over the last 20 plus years from a lack of continuity and a lack of a consistent team culture, a lack of a clear direction, and has suffered from just volatility, right? For the last 25 years, the Knicks and the Kings of all franchises, I'm sorry to both franchises for putting you in the same sentence, but they were neck and neck for turnover in the coach's seat and the front office. I believe they were the two that led the league. I haven't done the math recently. That kind of instability undermines everything else you're trying to accomplish. This is the longest stretch the Knicks have had with the same front office. That's a mark in their favor. And that they went 5 years with Thibs, outlasting every other coach of the last 25 years, I think shows that the Knicks perhaps have learned some lessons there. But I'm also not convinced that this was the right move at the right time. Even if you want to say, like, hey, 5 years is a good run, I just don't know. And listen, again, we're doing this in real time. It just happened. We will find out more along the way. Were there issues in the locker room? Were there just differences between Thibs and the front office? Was it about not developing the bench? Was it about not having more of a dynamic, diverse offensive approach? Maybe it's a little of everything. I just also don't know that bringing in a new coach is going to suddenly turn them into championship contenders without other roster moves. I don't know who's out there who's doing that.
Yeah, and also, like, I think the other thing to that point that should be said here is, like, and this new, we always talk about this apron era. I always bring this up now, right? It feels like if you have a good, competent team, a roll of the dice can get if you're the Knicks, you can get to the conference finals. You can get 2 games away from the NBA finals if so, 1 or 2 games away. I think continuity might be the key to all of this, right? At least if you're not going to have it from the players and the roster day to day, at least have it from the coaching staff. But what I want to do is ask this question, right? We referenced Mike Malone in the beginning. And I know, we've given you shit about your Michael Malone takes over the last couple of months. But I want to use your argument here. And I don't know how much reporting we're going to get to. Again, we're just spitballing. But if they made, you always made a distinction. If they had a decision that they were going to make and that they had to, maybe they made this decision in April and Thibodeau just made, just skyrocketed expectations or eclipsed expectations because they got to the conference finals. If they had already made that decision and they already knew what they were going to do, is that good or bad for this? Because say what you want about Leon Rose, he has been a model for continuity or continuity, as some people would say, over the last 5 years. Doesn't he earn the benefit of the doubt based on what he's built with this team and organizationally kind of having that shift?
I would have thought that whatever your concerns were with Thibs, that he had built up enough goodwill over the course of the last 5 years that you work through whatever the other differences are, right? Again, this is where the lack of reporting and we're doing, this on the fly makes it hard. But maybe there were just things he was not going to budge on, And there are times in this league where a team reaches its limits with a certain coach, and you just need a different approach, a different voice. But everything that they are right now, again, tough and resilient and grinders and everything, that's all a manifestation of the way that Thibs approaches the game. So it got them here. Is it possible that there was a limit on it? I know that that's a philosophy that's out there or a belief out there. I don't know. I don't know. I do know this. Though they had, the proverbial puncher's chance to make the finals, they were not favored to make the finals. No one expected them to make the finals. Maybe the most optimistic Knicks fans did. And I think certainly when this playoff run began and they knock out the Celtics, the defending champs, suddenly you're thinking everything is possible. But the Pacers knocked out the Cavaliers and they had the best record in the East.
Well, that's what I'm saying about continuity, right? If you have that and you continue to have that, there was a really good case to just run this back in whatever context that was in terms of the front office, based on what you've seen, right? The Eastern Conference is wide open, especially after that Tatum injury, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what Cliff Sixers are going to do. Probably worse than expectations. I didn't have to do that, but
that was gratuitous.
Yeah, that was an asshole. But no, you don't know what the Heat are going to be. They're probably not going to be as good as we, imagine, right? It's just wide open. A lot of teams can do stuff, and the Knicks were right there with the Pacers at the top of the Eastern Conference next year. They probably still are, depending on if they get this coaching hire, right? Because I do think there's an opportunity to get somebody that you really like, or get somebody that you feel can get the more out of Mikal Bridges, or actually get him the ball and make him be that Scottie Pippen-like player that we all know that he can be. So I'm kind of in the middle on this. I see both sides. I'm not really mad at this firing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Now that I'm talking through it, it's not I don't want to make it something where it's this is terrible, because I feel like we tend to do that within the shock of a coach firing. This shouldn't have happened. And I know there are coach firings that deserve that. Because we're in the middle so much, I don't think that this necessarily, I'm not mad at this. This doesn't deserve the, pitchforks and this is bullshit type of reaction.
Listen, I would love to come on here and have a definitive hot take that it was absolutely the right thing to do or absolutely the wrong thing to do. It really is a gray area on this one. There's 5 years by today's NBA standards is a pretty long run. And there's a lot in Thibs' favor. We've gone over it. There's a lot to critique. We've gone over a lot of that. The question ultimately becomes, as our friend Bobby Marks always goes to immediately, and I think he's already tweeted about this today, just the idea okay, so what's the alternative? Who are you getting that's better? Who's the coach who's coming in and unlocking this group and getting them to the championship? If you decided that Thibs was not the guy to get you there and that you'd reach your limits with him, and maybe that's true, all right, Who is it? Because I don't see any obvious candidates out there. And before everybody starts saying Michael Malone, I love Malone, and he did an incredible job in Denver, and they won a championship. But they're wired a lot the same way. And normally when this is how it goes in sports, in every sport, right? If you fire the hard-ass old-school coach, you bring in the player-friendly coach. If you're firing the player-friendly coach, you bring in the hard-ass old-school coach. Michael Malone is much closer to the Thibs model than not. And like Thibs, also has a habit of like leaning heavily on his veterans. That was the problem between him and Calvin Booth, right? Why they fired them both. Like, couldn't decide who they were going to play. Or, Booth wanted to play the young guys. Malone wasn't convinced of their worthiness. So I don't think that's the likely answer. I don't know who the answer is. Again, if you think that Thibs is not the right coach for them or is not going to get them to the finals or to the championship, fine. You can make the case for it. Who's the better alternative? And I don't know that anybody has that answer. And the Knicks have to now find that answer.
What's the lasting memory of what the Thibs era represents?
Huh. You know what's funny? Like, you could point to a couple different things. And I think like the best version of this would be, holy shit, they won games 1 and 2 in Boston and then finished off the defending champs. Like, that's just incredible. And that's the highs. But the game I'm going to remember most probably, like what's like the epitome, like encompasses all of it in one single game. It's Game 7 against the Pacers last year, right? Where the Pacers beat them on their home floor. And at that time, it was about it was as deep as into the postseason as the Knicks had been in forever. And they not only lost Game 7 at home, they lost it with player after player after player in that series going down, or some that didn't even make it to that series. Like, if that's not the Thibs era in a nutshell, I don't know what is. Good, bad, and otherwise.
It was entertaining, man. I think I'm sad for the segment of the New York population that really resonated with a Thibs team, right? Because like, it is hard nosed. You see that scowl on the sidelines, and that's fucking New York.
The hell of a scowl, man.
Right?
That's a Hall of Fame scowl.
I remember just like when the Knicks used to just come through the East Coast, or to come through the West Coast when I would see them. And yeah, they would like have, every time the Knicks come, they're one of those teams like, when the Lakers, or when, I guess for some people the Warriors, but when those teams, when it's an event when they come through, and there wasn't a coach that felt like that really exemplified what they were. I mean, you covered like Van Gundy and stuff like that, but like when Thibs came, it felt like that Knicks aura. Lack of a better term. Sorry, I'm doing a Gen Z story that's coming out.
No,
their aura, their Riz, it was back, baby.
Have you ever like, aura farmed, Logan?
I have a few times.
You farmed for an aura?
I mean, everybody tends to do that every once in a while.
I had no idea what that was until Tyrese Halliburton dropped it a couple weeks ago. I mentioned it on a Russillo's pod. I'm like, this is how you know I'm old and I'm cooked. But yeah,
I've still farmed a couple of times. I've done it.
Have I unknowingly farmed an aura?
You definitely have. You definitely have. I can't say when, but you definitely have done that. As one of the youngest members of the Ringer NBA team, I definitely know some Gen Z terminology, even though I'm a millennial. But like, aura farming, the Riz, you know what I mean?
You got to keep me up to date on this stuff, so I'm not falling behind.
It's okay, honestly, bro. Like, you don't want to be the old dude in the club, right, Cliff? Cliff, tell Howard, no old dude in the club. That's not fun. Don't do it. I'm starting to get there, but
no, you're not. You got. I'm
starting to get there, bro. I don't want to. You know what I mean? I don't want to do all that. But like, no, I think that ultimately, like when you saw the Knicks I think that's the thing I will remember. Again, I'm damn near 3,000 miles away, but that's what I will remember is like he brought the Knicks aura back.
He embodied it.
He embodied it. He liked it. And I think that that's important for whoever the next coach is, right? Whether you're player friendly or what, you got to embody what New York stands for and what all the boroughs stand for. And it's hard-nosed fucking basketball. And that's what they love, right? Like, even though they lost Game 7 last year, it was a bit of a win because, like, yo, man, we put bodies on the ground. We gave a fuck, right? Like,
dude,
that's what I remember.
Part of what was so respectable about it was like they went down fighting. Brunson goes down in that game. Anunoby had been out and tried to play, like made this 30-second cameo appearance. Like they didn't have Julius Randle. Like they still fought their butts off, and that's what New York loved about them. And that was what That's what everybody did. Like, especially last season, I thought like a lot of NBA fans, they didn't have to be New York fans. There was a magnetism, a charisma to that team because of how hard they fought, how hard they played. Thibs embodies that. Thibs instilled that. Thibs deserves credit for that. And the next coach will benefit from that, whoever that person will be. But good luck with this roster winning a championship, because there are some notable flaws.
Here's the thing, though, that I will say about that, though, really quickly, though. Like, I don't even know what it takes to win a title in this new era, right?
I know, right?
I mean, like, this playoffs has just fucked it all up, right? Like, the Celtics are supposed to be playing the Oklahoma City Thunder right now because we said it all damn year, right? And or the Cavaliers, we said it all damn year, and then they got knocked out in the playoffs. And I think you're going to start seeing more and more of that as teams maybe regress in talent level, but the parity is there. So like, if you're going to ask me right now, if Thibs was the coach, if the Knicks are a title contender next year, I'd probably say yes in this new era that we're in right now.
No, I think that's fair. I didn't mean to be that dismissive of it. Like they do have a shot. Anybody in the East has a shot. I mean, I don't know if anybody has a shot to beat the Thunder anytime soon, but famous last words.
You think the Hornets have a shot to get out of the East next year?
No. No, listen, the offseason will begin in a few weeks, and a whole bunch of crazy stuff's probably going to happen, because it always does, and we're expecting a pretty bonkers summer here. But as things stand right now today, if you were to try to project forward without knowing what moves are being made, you'd still say Cavs, Knicks, Pacers, maybe the Celtics if they figure out a way to patch it up without Tatum for a season, maybe the Bucks if they keep Giannis, maybe the Sixers if everybody stays healthy. Stop laughing, Logan. That's not nice to Cliff. Like there's the Knicks. The Knicks are in a group that could come out of the East, right? There's a handful of teams without knowing anything that's going to happen in the rest of June, July, August.
For Cliff's sake, I hope the Sixers do better, because he's going to talk so much shit next year.
Mostly to you.
Mostly to you. Shit. We all shit on. Relax. We all shit on the Sixers.
I'm the one who keeps saying I'm the glass half full guy. I keep saying, listen, Joel Embiid could stay healthy.
You know who shits on the Sixers the most? The second most? Cliff. He's a Philadelphian. That's what they do.
That's like calling out your own crazy uncle. Nobody else is allowed to.
Oh, that's fine. That's fair. That's a fair point. Okay, we're getting a little loopy. I know the Knicks are going to star chase. It's going to be and they're going to have a new coach while they're doing it. It's going to be a fascinating summer. Also, another thing that I'm curious about, is how much Brunson is going to have say in who his coach is, right? And how much, because he didn't have it. He came into the Thibodeau aura, if you want to get Gen Z with it. He came into his way of doing things, and now it's a fresh start, right? Because they're going to go star chasing, right? They're probably going to be like, "Hey, Milwaukee, what you doing, bro? How you doing? You want to make a deal? What's happening? How you doing? How you doing?" That's what they're going to say. That's actually Leon Rose's accent behind closed doors. You didn't even know. It's just talk. But they're going to make that. They're going to probably make that call. They're probably going to try to just get the roster better. And stars like being in control of shit. And maybe they pick a coach, even though Giannis's track record or whoever's track record isn't great at picking coaches. They like the power of it. Yeah.
And listen, they're gonna, as they always do, and as any responsible organization would, you're gonna check into everything, right? So if there's a Giannis deal to be made, I don't think there is one for them, but they'll check into it. They'll look into anybody and everybody who's available. But it's tough. Their payroll makes it tough. Their lack of draft picks that they've already traded makes it difficult. The second apron and all that makes it difficult. But I do think they have more work to do other than just finding a new coach. There are some roster things to do. And I'm guessing it's probably not going to be of the blockbuster variety. It's going to be more around the edges.
For sure. That's Howard motherfucking Beck, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to talk finals in the next segment. Oh, guess who's going to be there? Logan and Howard. This is the Logan and Howard episode. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll talk some finals talk. The finals are here at last, folks. It all comes down to this. Don't miss your chance to bet on all the legendary moments with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel is the best place to find all your favorite player props, and now you can make the smarter play with new performance trends. Want to check out a player's consistency during the playoffs? Or maybe they've been flirting with a potential triple-double. Get the latest stats right inside the app and see who's heating up. And after the tip-off, that's when things get real interesting. You can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Let's take a look at the slate. There's only one game on the docket, and that is game 1 between OKC and Indiana. I think I'm going to take the under on Tyrese Halliburton on points, rebounds, and assists. And then I think I'm going to take the over on points for Oklahoma City. If you don't already have FanDuel, it's not too late to get in on the action. You'll just get started with $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So just visit FanDuel.com/RingerNBA. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 years and older and present in select states, or 18 and older and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Where the hell is Raja? Where's he at?
I thought you had him.
I had him. I thought Cliff had him. Cliff, didn't you have him? Cliff,
who misplaced Raja?
Where'd he go? Where's he at?
Hey man, Raja's on a tourney. He's on the AU 20 run right now for future Isle Ty Bell. So let him do it. Let him.
What's those the little Apple things that you can put to track stuff? We need to put one of those on Raja.
That doesn't work. That doesn't even work.
No?
No.
Find my iPhone? Can I put Raja in there?
Find my Raja.
Find my Raja. We need a new app. Somebody get on that.
Yeah, so let him go out there, let him cook with, the future Owl, future Temple Owl, might I add. So, Raja's doing his thing, man. Doing the dad thing.
Doing the dad thing, man. Shout out to Raja. Shout out to Neff Tybell. Hopefully all that hard work gets him to Temple, or probably, you know what, man? I don't want to. Maybe somewhere better. Maybe like Penn or something. Or
UC Davis, perhaps.
Or UC Davis. Who's the GM at UC Davis? It's not a former king, is it? I don't know if they have a shot if it's not a former king.
That's the whole thing now. But Shaq signed up with Sac State, our arch rival. So, I don't even know how to top that.
I don't even know if Shaq knows that he did that, but
he may not.
Oh man, let's talk Turkey. Let's talk the NBA Finals. We have the finals matchup set. It is the Indiana Pacers versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. We definitely thought the Pacers were going to get to the finals in the beginning of the season, right, Howard? We do that. That was a shoo-in. I know I picked them somewhere somehow. It's just this is me and you talked about this pre-pod and yesterday in our phone call and our weekly chat just about what this finals means for the NBA, right? And what is this a changing of the guard moment? Is this a sliding doors moment? And just try to figure out and decipher what this means for the league. And you have one team that has been a beneficiary of the new cap rules. In the Indiana Pacers, and then you have the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are also just been a beneficiary of a lot of different things coming together with the draft picks and an MVP type player. I don't want to get to the question of where do you see these series going, because I think that's I think people pretty much have already talked about that at length, and we've talked about that on the entrance survey that you guys can check out on theringer.com. But I guess the question is, what does this mean for where the league is going, Howard? Where are we at right now? What does this matchup say about the current NBA?
It's funny because I swear I'm not trying to be the contrarian here, Logan. I know all of the buzz from the moment the Pacers clinched was, two small market teams. What are the ratings going to look like? All of the usual stupid hand wringing. And I get it. Bigger markets bring in automatic audiences, and these are not what we think of as flashy marquee teams for the NBA. But one, these are both really entertaining, really talented teams that casual fans should have been watching. And if they weren't aware of how good these teams were, maybe shame on us. Everybody knew how good Oklahoma was, right? Like the 68 wins speaks for itself, but also they've been the favorites to make the finals or win the championship since last summer. The Pacers we didn't see coming. And sometimes you can't. But I think the biggest takeaway here should not be, oh my God, two small market teams. How will the finals survive? How will the ratings? Who cares about ratings? Two great teams, two small markets is actually a strength. I swear this is not just me being contrarian. 2 small markets in the finals is showing how healthy the NBA is right now. And it's very simple. Everything they've done over the last 15 years of new collective bargaining agreements and aprons and second aprons and all the other crap that, we have to like try to explain and that GMs have to deal with has created this parity. And it's not just that we're going to have a 7th champion in 7 years. It's not just that Oklahoma or Indiana, when one of them wins, it will be the first time for their franchise, not counting obviously Oklahoma's previous Seattle existence. It's that these are 2 of the smallest markets. And this comes in the wake of Denver winning a couple of years ago. They're more of a mid-sized market. Milwaukee winning a few years ago. They are one of the smaller markets. This is a sign of a healthy NBA ecosystem where it's not all just LA, New York, and like Miami, again, not a big market, but it's a glamour market. The problem for the NBA has been for years is that teams in the colder outposts and the smaller outposts felt like they just didn't have any chance, no hope. And those fans then are like the depressed fan bases. So everybody should stop wringing your hands over the ratings. It doesn't matter. TV contracts are locked in for the next 10 years. That's a TV exec's problem. It's not the league's problem. If the games are great, and if all 30 markets now feel like they have a shot, because look at the evidence, it's sitting there right in front of us on national TV in June of 2025, that's a great fucking sign for the NBA. It's a great sign. And these are replicatable models. I think there's some like great scouting and luck and development and other stuff involved in it. We can get into it. But the fact that these 2 markets, these 2 teams are here is absolutely a healthy sign for the NBA and something that the rest of the NBA should take heart in.
Yeah, I think the other thing though, when you talk about ratings, who cares about that? I think that at least from when I think about this series, I think it has less to do with the market size and more to do with the matchup, right? I think while, we do have 2 exciting teams, Oklahoma City is far and ahead a better team in this, right? And I think what the NBA is dealing with right now is the fact that we have already kind of crowned a champion before the series has even started, and rightfully so. And we'll get into the details of why that is and the matchup. But I think that that's a bigger concern than anything else, including market size. Because if you had, I'm thinking about even the NBA is about star power. You're thinking about even 2012 when OKC and Miami played. Those aren't 2 big markets, but those rated pretty high because of the matchups and the star power. But I think with this one, it's tough to wrap your arms around it because we kind of already crowned a champion. I think that's the tough part, Howard, is that the Pacers are so overmatched on paper that it could be, the NBA is fighting against what could be a boring series, right? Or at least the perception that it's a boring series. And yeah. Chris Herring, friend of the show, one of our buddies, was pushing against that on Blue Sky. I'm pushing all of Beck's buttons right now. He's so excited that I'm just we're plugging Herring and Blue Sky. But no, I think that I think that he made a good Blue Sky and said it pushed back on the notion because it's going to be exciting. Well, I think that might only last for a game or 2. And I think that that's more of a problem than the market size as a whole, because we need a competitive series. And we haven't had that over the last few years. And I think that's what the tough part is.
I think it's fair. I think that, everyone will tune in for game 1. And even like the casual fans who are like checking it out maybe for the first time and like, oh, maybe they've watched a little bit of Tyrese Halliburton, but they're not all that familiar with the Pacers overall. They're going to want to, there'll be a curiosity, right? And if game 1 is suddenly a blowout and you've got everybody predicting either Thunder in 5 or Thunder in 4, most people, that could turn people off quickly. But I think we got to remember that a lot of times a lopsided series does not mean lopsided games, right? Like the Pacers and Celtics a year ago in the conference finals played one of the all-time close series, and it was a sweep, but it was an incredible series regardless of that. This might be I think you and I both in our finals entrance survey on theringer.com, I think we both said Thunder in 5.
Yeah. They asked who what the Indiana Pacers would need in this series, and I said they might need Jesus or Caitlin Clark.
Probably both. But I mean, it's not because they're like a bad team or lucky to be here. It's just that the Thunder are that stacked. That doesn't mean we won't have close games, Logan. Like, let's say this goes the way we think it is, and it's Thunder in 5. It may be Thunder in 5 with a overall point differential of 1.3 points a game. The math doesn't work there, I don't think, but something along those lines where it's going to be it's going to just like tip either way. Like, that Pacers Knicks series was a great series. Obviously, it went 6, but like every game -1, I think, maybe the last 2. Most of those games, the first 4 games of the series were really, really close. Both these teams have a lot of firepower. The Thunder obviously are incredible defensively, and we'll see if the Pacers can solve that to continue with the incredible firepower we've seen from them all season. But it doesn't have to be a bad series, even if it's a shorter series, is my main point there.
What chance and I'm going with the interest survey here, what chance do you give the Pacers at all in the series? What do they have to do aside from like 7 or 8 guys, rotation guys on the OKC Thunder just getting injured at just inopportune times? Like, how do the Pacers manage it? Because, like, look, I'm talking this out. I have no idea of how this can work, right? Because you talk about Tyrese Halliburton, great player. OKC's defense is literally tasked to stop a Tyrese Halliburton, right? They have so many great wing defenders, and the Pacers, they have Pascal Siakam and they have Miles Turner and Thomas Bryant, right? None of which are Jokic, who single-handedly, by the way, Jokic's stock is just somehow getting larger and larger as the playoffs go further and further. But the Pacers just don't match up well with OKC in any way offensively. And then you go on the other side, you have the MVP and OKC with SGA, and then you have a whole bunch of guys like J-Dub and guys that can just get their shots. And you have Chet, you have this a very, very deep team. When you look at it on paper, I just don't see it. But please, like, can we just talk through this and figure out how the Pacers can win a championship, Howard?
It's tough, man. Like, this is one of those things where, like, so our editors ask us this question and then, like, tell us in 100 words or less how the Pacers can somehow pull the upset or if they have a chance. Like, you could go through, you could talk yourself into circles trying to figure it out. Well, all right, if Nesmith and Nembhard make, like, I don't know, 70% of their threes, if Miles Turner wins the battle with Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, like, it's like you could try to finesse your way to this, but the bottom line is the Pacers, everything starts and finishes with Tyrese Halliburton, right? Siakam is great. Had a phenomenal series against the Knicks and has had a really great run with the Pacers so far. Nesmith and Nembhard have had their major moments. You might get a TJ McConnell game. Miles Turner will erupt here and there. But in terms of shot creation, it's really all about Halliburton. And, whether they're throwing Jalen Williams on him or whether it's Shea himself, whether it's Lou Dort, Cason Wallace coming off the bench, like, there's so many guys they can throw at Halliburton. And I just, if he gets worn down, if he can't get loose, if he can't keep the offense humming in that funky style of his, then it's tough. Like, he's got to create the open shots.
Like, OKC can play fast. Just as fast as,
and that's the other thing, right?
As Indiana can, but if you want to slow them down, they can also do that too. Like, it's just it's such a catch-22, and they're one of the greatest defensive teams that we've seen in NBA history.
The Pacers are, like, so freaking great when they get out and run, right? And that's how, like, they just drilled the Knicks, right? Like, that's where their advantage has been, is like, we're just going to crank this sucker up. And it's not even just, if you talk to the Pacers, they'll tell you, like, because there are a lot of, like, there's a lot of 7 seconds or less there. There's a lot of Mike D'Antoni Suns in the DNA, right? We're going to hear a lot of Halliburton, Steve Nash comparisons, which I think are legit too. It's not just that they fly up the court. It's not just the hit-ahead passes. It's not just that Halliburton's willing to give up the ball and be a really selfless point guard, which he is. It's that they're going to keep moving. The players are moving, the ball is moving, and they are going to put up shots quickly. And that's to their advantage against certain types of teams, as we saw against the Knicks, but it is not necessarily to their advantage against the Thunder. Like, it does keep the Thunder's defenders off you so that you don't get into that half-court grind where they're just, like, freaking swarming you and poking the ball away, and now it's a run out the other way. But you play at that pace, the Thunder are going to be more than happy to, like, go tit for tat on that. and run it down your throat too. Like they can
Yeah.
play at that pace really well, and you're having to get back too. So how these two teams decide, like, are you crashing the boards for offensive rebounds? Are you getting, or are you selling out completely to go back and stop the transition buckets? All that's going to be really interesting. But yeah, because everything begins and ends with Halliburton and all of their shot creation pretty much starts with him, I do worry for the Pacers' sake that the Thunder just have too many ways to kind of grind him to a halt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about just even the defenders that you named, how many defenders that they can throw at Halliburton. One of the things that the Pacers were able to do in the Knicks series is just straight tire them out, right, as the series wore on. And you would see that even in game one of the Knicks-Pacers series, where you saw, Raja talked about this in a couple episodes ago, where you saw the defenders not stepping up on Nesmith or Nembhard for 3-point shots and down the stretch of game one, and how they were just able to get open looks simply because the Knicks couldn't get over screens. Like OKC is not going to have that problem. They have they are going to get up on screens. They're going to stick onto their man. There could be a Halliburton game where he scores single digits in points and probably gets he might hit the triple single in one of these games. I'm not kidding. I'm not really just trying to have hyperbole. I do think that's the case. It's really, really tough to play against this team, especially when you only have one really creator. And the Pacers only really have that one type of creator. I'm just floored trying to find answers. And, we're not geniuses here, but just the proof is in the pudding on how OKC can deplore players defensively. Who is the person on OKC that probably has the most to gain from this final series, you think?
Ooh, most to gain. I mean, the easy answer here is just Shea, because how many years has it been since the regular season MVP also won the championship? It doesn't happen that often anymore.
Nah.
And
was it Steph? Well, no, probably it hasn't.
Probably
was it
probably.
Steph 14, 15 maybe?
Yeah,
I don't know.
probably.
Let me check. I'm going to check on that one. On that one. Go ahead.
Shea has already gained enough, right? It's not like he needs certification, validation here. He won the regular season MVP, but there's still, of course, plenty of people out there who think it should have been Jokic. And I do think winning the championship kind of helps certify that. And if you lose in the finals after winning regular season MVP in 68 games, that looks bad. So it's almost not so much to gain, but avoiding the loss or the smudge on the record. It would be a major disappointment. I think it's probably Shea, but listen, Sam Presti has done this incredible job of putting this roster together for the last decade plus or so. I think everybody has kind of considered him. He's been the consensus, if not the best GM in the league. He is always among the best executives in the league. And there's always this pushback oh, what has he won? What has he won? As if that's that easy. As the GM of a team or team president, the best you can do, make great moves, draft well, win the trades more often than not. And yeah, stockpile all the picks that he's done, everything else. If you don't win the championship, it doesn't mean you were a bad GM. It just means that, hey, there's a lot of other factors in this league. But Sam Presti absolutely is one of the best executives in the league, if not the best, and has been for some time. And I think this validation for him, he doesn't care, and he will say he doesn't care. But I think that's a significant piece of this too. It's one thing to make all the smart moves, to constantly be able to cash in and get 3 picks here, 5 picks there, get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the Paul George deal, leverage Westbrook for Chris Paul, and then flip Chris Paul. And every single time you're like, oh man, he did it again. And then at the end of it, there's still that chorus out there going, but what's he won? They're going to win the championship, and those people are going to have to finally shut up, because he's done an incredible job with or without the ring.
It's a little Jerry Westian, right? From Sam Presti without the ring, right? Damn it, he found another diamond in the rough. How the hell did he do that? How did he find that? Or more not diamond in the rough, but just more savvy, right? How did he convince you to do this again, right? How did he parlay this?
Well,
but he's also, it's also he was. I feel like Sam Presti very much saw into the future here, and it's also like not even just that, like and I know this from being a very tortured former A's fan. Like when you're in a market that doesn't really want to get into luxury taxes, you have to be even more creative, right? Like if things and you have to pivot. That's why the apron and this apron era really helps out the small market teams, because they don't have the money of the New York Knicks or the Clippers or the Warriors or the Lakers or the Celtics. They have to pivot if something isn't going right? They have to kind of maneuver in a different way, and it behooves them to do so. And if you're going to be a small market team, you're going to have a GM like Sam Presti, right, who is going to be willing and dealing back and forth. And I think that, he's kind of done that. One of the other things that I've just been thinking about in this series is just it feels like the ghost of 2012 is lingering in OKC, right? I feel like it was one of those things where OKC as an expansion city got something really too fast. And not that they didn't appreciate it, but they have not been able to get to that mountaintop again. And right now, I haven't been in OKC in a minute, but I could feel just the sense of urgency from like our guy Tyler Parker or, people that I know in OKC. I feel like there is going to be just explosion of excitement in OKC for this moment, not just for this title, but for what should have happened during the Durant, Harden, and Westbrook era. And that's going to be that's the storyline in me, the journalist in me. That's the thing that I can't wait to see. And I know that means that I know there's a lot of people in Indiana, but what are you talking about? We haven't even played the series yet. Talking about OKC. If they win, it's going to be a sight to behold there.
For sure. And the thing is, from the moment, if for everybody who's old enough to remember when the Sonics moved and it was awful for Seattle, but Oklahoma embraced that team and backed that team to the hilt from day one, even when they were winning like 23 games. And it's been one of the most passionate fan bases, one of the loudest arenas, one of the most intense. And yeah, they were blessed with Westbrook, Durant, Harden, Ibaka, and a young team that, talk about our premature declarations that, back then, even we were probably saying like, oh, here we go, future dynasty. It's hard. Sometimes shit just goes wrong. And that they had the misfortune of putting that team together right before the NBA really started to ratchet down or ratchet up the luxury tax and make it so punitive that the Thunder ownership said, we're not paying Harden the max. And so like, we don't need to go back into all that history, but like that team had to be unraveled before they even really got a chance after losing in the 2012 finals. And so that they're back here now with a completely different young group that also looks immensely talented, a potential big three. And we got to say potential, like people are rushing to anoint Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. This is a new big three. Like guys, like Jalen Williams has made an all-star team and I think made all NBA. Chet's not there yet. He may get there. Like, let's give us some time. But like are these three going to be at the same level of Durant, Westbrook, Harden? Like those three guys all won MVPs, obviously separately. But like the outline of an incredibly talented, awesome, and durable team that should be around for years to come is there. They got to win the first one first.
I'm old enough to know that Howard Beck was at the last NBA Finals game in Indiana.
Yeah, that was
you old fart.
My first
old
finals.
Geezer.
My
hey, ain't the first finals just like the coolest thing ever? You're just like, what the? Because I remember my first finals in 2018, and it just, the air feels different, right? You have that gold all around, and it's just, you could just see that you're in a history book. It's something special, right? Isn't it cold? Just the first finals. It's just a mind fuck, man. Like, dude, a beautiful mind fuck.
It's let me just say it this way to people, for most listeners who probably have not had the privilege to be at a finals, and I've been at many, and the part of it that never gets old, and I've been to 20 something finals over the years. When you walk in that building, it feels different. It does not feel like any other game or any other playoff game. And like, even like, obviously I covered the Lakers for 7 years. And so the first finals I covered is 2000 with the Lakers against the Pacers. And you walk into, like, obviously it was Staples Center first. It was, 232. Whether you're going to Conseco Fieldhouse, as it was called at the time, or at Staples, you walk in and it just does not feel the same. And there's a tension in the air and a buzz and an excitement, and you like feel it in your bones. And you and I, Logan, we're old school journalists. We got no skin in the game. I don't care who wins or loses. There's no emotional investment here whatsoever. And I still feel nervous. I don't even know who I'm nervous for. I think I'm nervous for me because I got to write on deadline.
You know, it's funny
weird,
because it's
right?
just like you have to step up your game. I remember the first finals that I went to was 2018. It was the Warriors versus the Cavaliers, where I actually covered it. Like that was the first ever finals game I'd ever been to, covered and ever actually got credentialed for. And you feel this competitiveness, but you're also like how the players are, but like you also see some of the best of the best go to the finals to cover it, right? So you're not only trying to like win your beat, but you're trying to kick like national people's ass. So I remember the immense pressure that I felt in my first year, like covering the NBA on a real level. And you get to this point where you're like, I got to kick some ass, but who am I going to beat here? How am I going to beat this matchup, right? And I remember my first finals, I wrote a sidebar on Patrick McCaw. That was my game 4.
Patrick McCaw. Wow.
Yeah, baby. That was like my game 4 finals ending story. And I was like, that's how I ended it, And no disrespect, Pat McCaw was a fine player. But it was a sidebar. It was a 400-word sidebar on like his future and what he's going to do next. And I remember like full circle moment in the 2022 finals. I was working at the Ringer and I wrote like this huge like piece on the Warriors and got like good stuff. And that was the standard that I remember that like I wanted to get to in 2018, and it felt good. But that's the tension, right? Like, you really want to measure yourself against some of the best, similar to like how the NBA players do. And there's that's I think what the tension is that you're speaking of, Howard, is like also, the most amount of people are probably going to read your shit during the finals, and you want to do a great job there and actually want to make an impact. And there's that tension. And then there's also the competitiveness tension that you see from the players, and that heightens. And then you see the extra security, and you see the T-shirts, and you see the extra art on the ground. Like, it's just a whole, and then everything is a press conference, right? There's no, like, it's not a practice, right? There's just like 100 media members. It's all these things coming together at one time. And then you want to see where you are in the pecking order where the league puts you, right? Like that, it's just so many different things that come together at once that is just, it puts a pitter patter in my chest, Howard.
It's a different atmosphere. And so when people say like, if you wonder about how the players feel in that atmosphere, and it's like, well, it's the same arenas you've played in all season, right? Especially when you're at home. Your routine is the same. Like, why should this be any different? And it's like, if you walk in as a bystander, which is essentially what we are, and you can feel the tension and the pressure in the air and the buzz, damn straight those guys feel it too. And obviously the pressure is really on them. We can talk about how much we want to perform highly.
No one gives a fuck about us, bro.
Nobody gives a fuck about us. But it is like they feel that anyway. But they partially feel it because there is just a collective electricity that 20,000 people in the building create. That is absolutely, I'm telling you, it is immeasurable. It is. There's no analytics for this. It is fucking different. It just is. And by
it's
the way,
biggest show in that city too. And it's like wherever you go, it is the only thing people are talking about.
Especially when it's in the smaller towns, right? Because what happens in a place like Oklahoma or Indiana, and I've been to the finals in both, like they'll be like, I think there's like even like decals on the ground around the arena and whatever. So like, and there's banners and shit up on like light posts. So like if you are downtown in one of these cities, like if it's in LA, it just blends in with everything else going on in LA. Like you don't necessarily feel like the whole city is alive.
I think that's the LA specific thing. No, but I think that's the LA specific thing, because if you think about like the finals were in New York, that would be the only thing that New York would be talking about, right?
But dude, I'm actually, it's funny. You walked 3 blocks away from the Garden during the conference finals, and it just feels like New York. I was having this conversation with, I think it was when Michael Lee and I walked out late after one of those games, and we were like, you get a couple blocks away, and suddenly it's just New York. Because like New York's always got a bunch of shit going on. And this is not me doing the big market, small market thing or like coastal elite thing. I'm just saying like it is different when it's in the smaller cities because you see it and you feel it everywhere. It's got a much bigger like just impact. But it's like there's nothing like it. And I can't wait to see what these two cities feel like when I get there. I'm flying to Oklahoma after we tape.
I've been to 4. I've been to 4 NBA finals, and I've had it like a different experience when you talk about like just the vibes in the city, because the other cities were Cleveland, where, I mean, it's Cleveland. They give a fuck about, their Cavs, especially during that run. They shut the whole city down. And then it was Toronto, who had never seen an NBA finals. So the whole city was only talking about the NBA finals. That was the only show. And then the other ones I went to was Milwaukee, where again, same thing. Hadn't never gone to a finals. They'd been in the finals and won the championship, I believe, in the 70s with Lou Alcindor, and then Boston, which was, I mean, that shut the city down because anytime the Celtics are Boston in every way, so you could see that. So I had a little bit of a skewed view, but like, yeah, that makes sense. That would make sense why that would, the bigger cities would. But I'm surprised about New York. I can see LA because LA doesn't give a shit about anything, for real.
A lot of Laker flags on the cars, though. That was I don't know if that's still going to be a thing the next time they do this, but like the Laker flags on cars everywhere. That's how you knew you're going down the 405, and those things are just flapping in the wind on every car.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the Pacers a little bit, and that's where we started the question. By the way, I was right. Steph was the last one to win the MVP and also win the title, but he did not win the Finals MVP that year. That was Andre Iguodala. Before that, it seemed like it was like LeBron won a couple where he won the MVP, but also won a championship. Yeah, I think those are the ones that stick out. It doesn't happen when like Tim Duncan back in the day was Shaq. You covered Shaq at 2000 when that happened.
Timely trivia note from the NBA comms account, which just sent this up as we were talking. Shea has a chance to become the first player to win a scoring title and championship in the same season since Shaq in 99-2000. So we've also got that in play.
Okay, there we go. So what do you think Indiana is feeling as a city? We just talked about like how cities are going to be galvanized around this type of event. How do you think that's going to be? And what are you excited to see on the ground when you get there?
Like the Pacers, I mean, come on, man. That's freaking Hoosiers. Like, this is basketball country.
Did you see the propaganda that they just spewed after they got the trophy? This is it. This is basketball territory. You remember they said it?
Well, no.
I think
so
Rick Carlisle said, he said there's 29 other teams, and then there's 29 other. What did he say? 29? I don't know the quote, but he said this is where basketball is born.
No. So they've had this as like their slogan for decades. Like literally, I think since I started covering the league, where I don't know if it's up on if it's in a banner or a sign in Conseco Field or whatever the hell Gamebridge Fieldhouse they're calling it. But they would say it before every game. Like it was like in 29 other markets, it's basketball, but this is Indiana. Or it's something like that. And so that was what Carlisle.
Yeah, okay.
That was what Carlisle said. By the way, the Kings ripped that off at one point. I don't know if they still do that here in Sacramento, where I'm broadcasting from today. But like the Kings pulled that at one point, and I'm like, dude, you can't do that. Like Indiana's been like they've had that for like forever. Plus, it's Hoosiers, it's Indiana. Like you can't.
That's a very Sacramento thing to do, though. By the way,
yeah, that was cheesy. So like, dude, that's legit. That's legit. And yeah, this is the franchise of Reggie Miller and that 2000 finals team. And like, there is a basketball pride there. It's also like, by the way, when the NBA was struggling, before the lockout in 2011, when we had like the Great Recession and there was a lot of talk of like, some teams are losing a ton of money and everything else, there was at least like quiet buzz about like, are the Pacers viable? And like, they're like, the NBA is never going to leave Indiana. The historic roots are really deep, but there were concerns for a while. Like they're owned by the Simon family. And like, this is not the modern, mega billionaire owners. This is not Steve Ballmer. And so there was concerns at one point. So like they've come a long way to get back here. And, that should be celebrated. By the way, Kevin Pritchard quietly just, like we talk about Sam Presti, How many fans know Kevin Pritchard's name? Kevin Pritchard's the guy who swaps Sabonis for Halliburton, who gets Siakam out of Toronto. And you got to have the good fortune for teams to be making these guys available, but you have to have the assets to get them. You have to, be the one to make the negotiation work for both of you so that you're not giving up too much. They got Nembhard late in the draft. They got Nesmith out of Boston. And like, they just keep making these quietly really solid deals that you wake up one day and go like, oh my God, they're a 50-win team. Oh my God, they're in the NBA finals. So props to them too. Because again, like, this is not, neither of these teams went and poached somebody else's superstar, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad model. Like, everything's legit.
I mean, well, OKC poached,
Shea was not a superstar when they got him. And Tyrese was not a superstar when the Pacers got him. Like, these teams recognized something in these guys before they had completely busted out.
Yeah, and
that should be credited.
I mean, you're in Sacramento now. Jesus, I just keep thinking about the Kings, just how bad of a deal that was. Even in a moment,
bad for fans here, man.
Oh my goodness! I mean, even in a moment, that was a terrible trade. And I know that people were like, "Oh man, they got there's Sabonis is getting back." People in Sacramento were trying to convince themselves like this was a good trade, but everybody knew like Halliburton was special in the moment, right? And like in the Clippers organization, I don't know how many fans they necessarily have on the ground, but there was a lot of people within that front office that did not want to give up Shea. Like, basketball people knew what SGA was and it was going to be. And same with Halliburton, right? Like, I remember, hearing a lot of people that were against the Halliburton trade. It was like, no matter what he becomes, you do not trade Tyrese Halliburton to the type of players with that type of ilk, right? Whether they're a role player or whether they're a superstar, which he ended up being. And so, like, it's in a lot of ways, these two teams fleeced some level of incompetence. And that's just where we are right now. And I think that you're going to start seeing a lot more of that with the apron, right? Like, you're going to have to give up players left and right. And some lesser front offices are going to make these mistakes time and time again.
It's going to happen. But in this case, I think these were just two teams that were opportunistic.
Right place, right time.
And really smart, right? Like, the Thunder saw what Shea could become. The Clippers kind of knew it too, but they had an opportunity to get Paul George and Kawhi together. We don't need to relitigate that. The Pacers had reached a dead end with that Sabonis Miles Turner pairing in the front court. They saw an opportunity. The Kings knew that or at least they felt that Tyrese and De'Aaron Fox weren't going to function well together. They couldn't trade Fox because he had the massive contract, the massive extension he just signed, so it was harder to trade him. So you trade the guy you could trade to try to balance out the roster. Like, I get it. It doesn't mean it was justified. Doesn't mean it was a good deal, but I at least understood the vague outline of it. One guy was way more tradable and more valuable in trade than the other. But the bottom line is Pritchard and Sam Presti saw something, pounced on it, did what they had to do to get those guys. And by the way, neither of those guys are high picks either. Like, Halliburton was 13th and Shea 12th, or vice versa. Like, these were not. What I love, one of the things I love about this series, and I wrote about this last week, is like, they built a completely different way, both these teams. The Thunder, sure, did like a 2 to 3 year tank, but it wasn't a Sixer style, like 5-year tank job. And their best player, sorry, Cliff. The Thunder's best player was acquired in a trade at a time when the guy wasn't even a star yet. Same for the Pacers. They acquired Halliburton before he was even a star. And then they figured out how to build around these guys. And they did it very differently. But it's not the old models. These are not top 3 picks who are leading the way. These are not superstars that they poached from elsewhere leading the way. Siakam's really good, but he's not that level. And so, like, they've just had to be really smart, really patient, really creative. And I think it's fantastic. Again, like, that's the model now. Anywhere you are in the NBA, whatever kind of size market you're in, like, hire a smart front office, and that gets you a lot of the way there.
Howard motherfucking Beck, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get out, you have something to plug.
Yeah, quick plug. I think a lot of people know this just because it's popped up on social media a bunch, but I also am teaching at the Sports Business Classroom, which is associated with the NBA Summer League. That's in mid-July with Summer League. Sports Business Classroom is still accepting applications. So if you want to learn how to be, so we have a media and broadcast unit, myself, J.A. Adande, Katie Heindel, CP the Franchise. The czar, Mike Fratello, is joining our group this year.
Oh, shit.
So if you want to learn from any or all of the above, that's on the media side. But they're also, if you want to be an agent, if you want to be an NBA GM, if you want to be a scout, an analytics person, salary cap specialist, like the Sports Business Classroom, great experience for all of that. Go to sportsbusinessclassroom.com. You can check it out there and register there. But it's a fantastic program. I really enjoy teaching at it. And all the students I've met over the years who have gone through it, whether they're part of media or whether they're like Cap or the other, like these, they learn so much. And a lot of them have gotten jobs in the league too. I now bump into them on the road in various cities. So Sports Business
Howard
Classroom.com.
Look at Howard helping to cultivate his sources. Pro move right there.
Got to play the long game, Logan.
You know the vibes. I have a plug too, man. The Sports Journalism Institute. I just spoke to the students on yesterday, and similar vibes. They try to get journalists of Black and brown descent, women of color, women in general into the field. If you want to make a donation, go to Sports Journalism Institute, Google them, figure it out. But it's a really great program. I am a part of it. People like Malika Andrews, friend of the show, Candace Buckner, some dude named Marcus Thompson.
He's all right.
He's fine. List goes on and on. Jonathan Abrams. List goes on and on. But make sure you tap in with the Sports Journalism Institute. All right. That is this version of the program. We're going to see me, Howard, Joel Anderson, and Bryan Curtis on the other side of this break talking inside the NBA. Okay, guys, we are back. I am mourning the end of Inside the NBA. I've been mourning it for some time now, and we are recording this on the Thursday before potentially the last game of Inside the NBA on Turner, Inside the NBA as we know it. So to help me cope, I got a great panel of people, Mr. Bryan Curtis and Mr. Joel Anderson from Pressbox fame, and the immortal Howard motherfucking Beck, who, like me, was employed by Turner for a stretch with Bleacher Report. Myself, I was a summer intern in 2016, and I remember when we were doing the internship, Bryan. They had us talk to like all the execs at some point. I'm not going to say all their names, but it was 2 years after the 2014 NBA TV deal. And the mood around, all the execs, we would go, like, we would set up appointments as like interns to such and such's office here, such and such's office here. And everybody was so excited about another NBA deal because they were like, this is our lifeblood. This is what we do. We do NBA basketball. This is our thing. Of course we have NHL. Of course we have MLB, but this is the bloodline of this institution. And to see it now go to where it is now, Bryan, like, are you feeling as sad as I am that something is a part of our being as basketball consumers is dying no matter what happens when Inside goes to ESPN?
I am sad. And it's a strange kind of sadness because what you're sad for is not that you're losing a friend exactly, because Inside will be around, but you're losing theme music. You're losing graphics. You're losing this kind of basketball. And the people here are old enough to remember that in the 90s, the way you identified as a basketball fan is you watched the Turner games on weeknights and not just the NBC broadcasts on weekend. That was seeing this before advanced stats, before the Zach Lowe podcast, before all that stuff. That was the tier of basketball fandom, that you were watching weeknight basketball on Turner. And yes, I am going to miss that and miss that feeling.
What are you feeling, Joel? How are you processing the end of this, or the booming and the seemingly end of this? We don't know if it's going to happen on Thursday, but the game, there's only going to be at least 3 more games left. Like, how are you coping?
Without making it too personal, like, I mean, really the show has, like, I've kind of grown up with the show. And so there used to be a time when I could watch basketball all the time, right? Where I just had nothing to do. Friday night, I'm watching the Malice at the Palace, whatever, like there's no bedtime. There's no other obligation. And slowly but surely, as I've gotten older, and now I've got 2 young kids, one 3, one 8 months old. And so it's very hard to watch anything. But the basketball event that I make time for are the games on TNT, and I will stay up late enough to watch Inside the NBA. And despite the fact that people have like talked about, how negative they are, how uninformed they are about the game or whatever, I'm in it for a good time, bro. And they always seem like they're having a good time. And so it's possible that they will be able to do that at ESPN. As a former ESPN employee, I'm rooting for it. I think it's ESPN is one of the last places in media that is, wholeheartedly invested in sports and bringing sports to folks. But like, when has ESPN like been able to organically create fun on TV? It's something in a few instances, particularly with like these panel shows, right?
Yeah.
They've tried it so many different ways, with their Sunday NFL show, their NBA shows. Like, I mean, they're good and they're informed, but they're not inside the NBA. And so that's kind of what I friend. Like, like Bryan said, like the graphics, all the other stuff, the EJ's, stat of the week or whatever. Like, is that going to go to ESPN? I don't know, but I'm going to miss all of that particular moment because if you're of a certain age, like you feel like they were your buddies. You woke up and it was like, man, I went to sleep. Inside the NBA was on, and now I'm watching Charmed reruns. I woke up and Charmed reruns. That was a real thing for a lot of people, and like that's just going away. So, but I mean,
there's not going to be a montage of like Shaq having to use the bathroom early. At least I don't think so on a Disney network like it was last episode. Howard, you are in the unique position because you covered the game while Inside the NBA was on its reign, and then you become a Turner employee. Now, albeit it was with Bleacher Report, but if I'm not mistaken, you had done some stuff for Turner and gone to Atlanta Lake. And now you have the distinction. You might be at the last Turner game tonight at the Garden. What are your feelings like, and how was it going from where you were as a beat writer with the Times, and then to kind of come into that fold with Bleacher? What are your feelings right now? How are you doing?
It's weird because we've got this like long, slow goodbye, right? This prolonged farewell where first it was, oh, Turner might lose the deal. They might be out. What would that be like? And then as that slowly becomes reality, and then they come up with this strange hybrid thing where like, well, Turner won't have the contract with the NBA anymore, but Inside the NBA will live on, probably still from Studio J, we think, maybe. I don't know. Bryan,
and we're also not clear on like how they're going to do it, right? Like what games are going to be countdown versus Inside. That we just haven't gotten clarity on that yet.
Yeah, and like when Bryan was talking about like, well, it'll still be them, but maybe not the theme song and maybe not the graphics or maybe not like the things that make it feel and sound so familiar and like a part of our extended family. If those things fall away and it's just the four guys, I mean, they're the essence of the show. But as we all know, because of what we do for a living, and as folks at Turner for sure know, it's like dozens, hundreds, whatever of employees who also are like the ones who are behind the graphics and the production and the presentation that make it feel the way it does. It's never just the four guys on our screen. And so it's just been interesting because we knew that this was going to happen. And then we hear more details along the way, but we're still not sure what it's actually going to look like when they're Inside the NBA brought to you by ESPN. I don't know what that looks or sounds like. Will it still look or feel the same? And so we had the All-Star goodbye where there was the, I think, unfortunately executed, tribute to themselves on the court.
Did you fall asleep in the All-Star game when that happened? I think that during that break, I might have fallen asleep.
I did not, but it was a little.
It was 45 minutes.
It was too long. I love those guys, but it was too long. And so there was that goodbye. It was their final All-Star weekend. I wrote about it at the time for The Ringer. There was that goodbye. And then we have maybe a goodbye tonight at the Garden if it's their last on-site game where the studio was on the premises at an arena, because that's not going to happen again when you're not actually carrying the game yourself. We might still see Shaq, Chuck, Ernie, Kenny, but not on site in this. So we have all these different goodbyes. And then it's not even a full goodbye because they're going to be back next season and we just don't know what it's going to look. So I think it's just it's a very strange, conflicted feeling where we can't quite mourn the end of Inside the NBA. We can mourn it at the end of what it was as we knew it, but it's not completely going away. So like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to feel other than if I see those guys tonight. I saw Shaq on the court pregame at the last Knicks home game, bumped into Ernie briefly too. Like I'm going to like say hello and thank you and shake hands or whatever, but it's still going to be weird because like we're not really saying goodbye. Like they're going to be around, just not the same. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, well, Bryan, how does ESPN make the best version that they can of Inside the NBA without? Well, if we know anything about ESPN, we know that they put guardrails on certain things. Now that has changed with Pat McAfee, but you get what I'm saying. With their network shows, they're really like hands on with the countdown or NFL countdown as well. But everything I know about Inside and how it's produced is it's very on the fly production, right? Like they'll have some memes that they see on television. It's immediately going on screen. Like part of the great thing about Inside is that everybody but Ernie has no idea what's going on. And it does have that element of surprise, but how does ESPN recreate that if they do it at all? Like, what are you expecting this new Inside set to look like? How does that format survive with us, the common NBA fan?
Do you remember a few years ago when the Daryl Morey Hong Kong incident happened? ESPN treated that like Love Canal or 3 Mile Island. I mean, it was like, nobody talk about this. We cannot touch this at all. And if we do, it is very, very, very carefully. Inside just happened to be here in LA, and they were doing the show live from outside of now Crypto, then Staples. And I remember talking to the guys, they had this little media function afterwards, and Ernie Johnson said, "Oh, we didn't talk about what we were going to say when we addressed the Daryl Morey situation." Like they did not script it at all. They didn't even lay out like, what are we going to do about this issue that everybody in the NBA was worried about? So just think about that distinction between the way Inside handled it and the way ESPN as a company handled that one issue. I will say, and Joel and I have talked about a lot on Press Box, is in the announcer empowerment era at ESPN, people can get away with a lot more. They have a lot more latitude. Joel says ESPN can't create fun. Well, they can purchase fun. And they've done that with McAfee. Your mileage may vary. They've done that with Joe and Troy on Monday Night Football. And those people have a lot of power. So I would be shocked, honestly, if it is all that different in terms of the content. Like I do not see much of a universe where Charles is going to let himself be produced, where those guys, the show is going to be done by Turner and sort of leased to ESPN. Again, we can talk about the length of the show, which I think is very, very key to the whole thing. But in terms of what they are going to be able to say, I would actually bet the other way and bet that it's going to be a lot more like classic Inside the NBA.
Don't you think, by the way, too, if ESPN does try to intrude in quite that way, it'll be grand opening and grand closing for Chuck, right? Like, I mean, it's like he's looking for a reason to retire. And if it feels like it, right?
He says.
He says. But if they tried to handle him in that way, then I imagine that he'd be like, I can find other ways to spend my time.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that would be Chuck's stance. I would imagine it would be all of their stances, but Chuck for sure is not going to, he doesn't suffer fools, and he's not going to suffer somebody trying to tell him what he can and can't say on the air or how to behave himself. In my discussions with people at Turner, especially around All-Star Weekend, and I chatted with Kenny, Shaq, and Chuck for that story. It certainly sounded like everybody at Turner feels like they've got all the assurances they need that we're going to be able to do what we do the way we've done it without any interference. That is the expectation. So I don't think we all should believe otherwise until or unless we see otherwise. But I still feel like that's this weird thing hanging over it until we actually get there next season. But yeah, I don't. It does not survive if ESPN tries to control it, if Disney tries to control it in any way, shape, or form.
Howard, what was it like when you did go into Atlanta? Because I did the summer internship, but like, what was it like being in that little ethos, right? Like, I know we don't say like we don't use family and work and stuff like that, but as close as you can, from my experience with Turner, that's probably the closest environment to like a work family that I've ever seen in my life in terms of like how they, go on the road with each other. They're friends. They go to each other's weddings. You could just see just the camaraderie. What was it like day to day when you would go, when you did go to Atlanta?
I went down there a bunch of times. So like sometimes they'd fly me down there for some NBA TV stuff. We would do like, I don't know, a trade deadline special or a playoff special or something, whatever. So I'd go down there and, sit there in the studio, do stuff with Jared Greenberg, Brian Geltzeiler, Sam Mitchell, whoever. So like there were those trips. And then there were a couple times that I went down because I was working on something that was just a story where I needed Shaq or I needed Chuck or I needed Kenny or whatever for just regular NBA stories. And they were always just so welcoming. Now, granted, being at Bleacher Report, which was owned by Turner, you're kind of considered part of the family by then, but they had all known me previously from New York Times or maybe even LA Daily News. So I had this weird line I was straddling where it was like I was always covering them as a reporter who was outside of this. But once I was at Bleacher Report, there was probably a little more consideration to just kind of get to go hang out. But the thing is, as anybody who's ever gone to hang out there knows, you don't have to be a Turner employee to just feel like you're at home hanging out around Studio J or in the green room or in the lounge or wherever in that complex. It's just really fucking chill there. And like, no, like people just like Dwayne Wade's just walking through. Hey, what's up? Like, it's just very relaxed.
Grant Hill is just like smooth as ever, just walking through the corridors.
Yeah. And I loved that about it where, from the on-air talent to the PR people I dealt with, to producers, to whoever, it did not ever feel corporate. It did not ever feel buttoned down. And I've never been in any of ESPN's complexes and Joel can speak to that more intelligently than I can or more informed than I can. But like everything I've ever heard about ESPN sounds a hell of a lot more corporate and a little stilted sometimes. Turner has this very, it is a family atmosphere, which sounds like so cliche and so Pollyannish and annoying, right? Because like, how could they? Like they're this massive, entertainment conglomerate, whatever. They're part of, I don't know, Discovery, Warner, whatever the fuck they are now. The Turner sports part of it always had a more intimate feel. And I really appreciated that. And it was fun hanging out. Like I'd be sitting there, like, talking to Chuck while he's getting made up in the makeup room. And everybody's just like yucking it up. And then like they got the one room, that lounge where they've got all the TV screens and these massive chairs that they can sit in where they go when they're not on air. And, again, it's just like, everybody's just like shooting the shit, giving each other grief about whatever. And I don't know. It was fun. I enjoyed getting to hang out there. And that's not what I would have expected going in.
I remember just that summer. It was the summer 2016, and it was the year KD went to Golden State, but it was also the year that like Timothy Mozgov had got like a crazy deal with the Lakers, but that was like a crazy free agency. And I remember just being in that room that you speak of, because that's I don't know if that's the green room. I think that's the green room that you're speaking of, Howard, where everybody's chilling. There's a big long desk where the production meetings happen, and then there are a group of chairs in front of it. That's how it was when I was there. So I would just be in that chair because it was so lax. Like you were interning, but like it was basically like come whenever you want to, come to any show that you want to go to, and I would just be there from like 9 a.m. to whenever that shit like. It helped that it was really hot in Atlanta, but I was in there the whole summer. But it was just like it was so cool because like they were so welcoming in a lot of ways. Where I've done television other places, and it's not like that. It's very much closed ranks, and they're like, "No, come in." And I remember that was the first time David Aldridge was there, and I remember he was going to like he was getting ready for television. He was away from his phone, and I saw. Somebody was calling him. It was Sam Presti. And I had to go, Mr. Aldridge, Sam Presti's calling you. Oh, that was so wild to me, right? But they were just so accommodating. And I'll never forget that summer. And just, it wasn't quite inside, but it was Turner. You could see the family dynamic, not just from like inside the NBA, but from the NBA TV shows and the symmetry there, right? And all the other NBA shows that they had on NBA TV and everything that was in there. They had symmetry with Cartoon Network, which was also at Techwood, and Adult Swim which was also in Techwood, right? It was just this big campus of all of these different networks. It was really cool. But Joe, I want to talk to you a little bit about Charles Barkley.
Oh, okay.
And you're always talking about, I listen to the press box religiously, and you're always talking about, Houston and Texas and all that propaganda. Well,
hey, you just said that Houston's one of your favorite NBA cities. I know that might ruin your bona fides in the Bay, but you did say Houston's one of your favorite NBA cities. So,
hey, man, there's only a beef between Rockets fans and Warriors fans. There ain't no beef between the Bay and Houston itself, I don't think. But Houston's shit. I love Houston. It's a great NBA city. I love it. I was just saying in the case of the question, though, that during the time what were your feelings when Charles first came on to the Seam on Inside? Because he had kind of stolen some money from Houston Rockets for the last couple of years of his career, and I know that probably put a bad taste in your mouth. But then he comes to the television, and then, what do you think he becomes as you are coming of age, and what does he become to you, and by extension all your homies and all the NBA fans that you know?
I think the one thing about Chuck that is really interesting, and I do have kind of a funny Charles Barkley story, is that when he was with the Phoenix Suns, he came to Houston to play against the Rockets, and I probably went to maybe 6-7 Rockets games total. It's kind of expensive. My parents were not, we weren't that flush with cash. But if you would cut your hair off like Barkley, you could get to the game. So my dad got his hair. They gave him a baldy outside of the Summit so we could go watch the Charles Barkley and the Suns play in Houston. I've always been a Charles Barkley fan, man, and I think he's written probably about 8 memoirs, and a couple with one with Michael Wilbon, but there was one that was before he went to Phoenix, and near the end of his time in Philadelphia. And I've always just been sort of charmed by him because you can tell when somebody is really, really comfortable with himself, right? And I admired the fact that he was willing to be wrong in public, right? And so that's how I've always just sort of followed him. And so when he ended up going on Inside the NBA or whatever, it seemed sort of like a perfect fit. Like, I'm not one of those guys that is like, oh, the most popular athlete in the sport, you've got to get him on TV. Like, I mean, we'll see what happens with Tom Brady, but like, I was old enough to remember seeing Joe Montana on TV and being like, ooh, that's not going so great. I mean, I saw, look, I love Magic Johnson, man, but I saw Magic Johnson on TV and it was like, ooh, I don't know if I need to see more of that, But with Barkley, it always sort of made sense, kind of in the way, and I know people won't agree with me on this, but like Draymond. Like, I mean, Draymond is a person I feel like I see him on TV and I'm like, oh, he's really good at this. He's really comfortable with himself and comfortable on TV. And so I am a huge Barkley fan, and when he was on there, it seemed like the perfect fit. And the only thing that I ever worried about when he was on that show is that he would try to branch out too much, right? Like, I was just like, he's so smart and so funny within his world, and that sometimes whenever he tries to venture outside a little bit, or they try to make him into some sort of like a philosopher, right?
Yeah,
like try to make him like a country boy philosopher.
We need to have a dialogue, Chuck. It's the wild waters.
That's the thing, yeah. And it's just like, man, it's just, but it's really a testament to Chuck that like he can sort of make those missteps and people just kind of overlook because they're just like, man, he doesn't take himself too seriously, and he's also open to critique, and he has something that I think that is a gift that is unique to humans, but especially the kind of people that end up on TV. He's willing to make fun of himself and let other people make fun of him, and I think that says a lot about him. And so, I think he's probably one of the more fascinating TV figures, and that's why anytime a media property tries to do something, they like interview Charles Barkley. Like they want to, like when the Undefeated started out, Jason Whitlock wrote a huge feature on Charles Barkley because everybody's just trying to like get their arms around the phenomenon of Charles Barkley. Because
was that Charles? Was that Whitlock that wrote that? I feel like that was somebody else. Was it
Whitlock?
No, I don't think it was Whitlock.
Jesse David Washington, I believe, was the one.
Was it Jesse Washington? Was it Jesse Washington?
I believe so.
Okay, you're right. It's Jesse Washington.
Whitlock published it, but yes.
Whitlock published it, right. There you go. So yeah, but people want to get their arms around Charles Barkley. Like they really want to explain him. He's sort of like he's a person that is fascinating. And And I mean, there's a reason for that. And you see it every night. And that's the reason why I stay up late, even though I probably shouldn't. I should go to sleep. But I want to see what Chuck is going to say, because he's willing to make fun of himself. He's willing to, I mean, man, there was the other night on TV, he was up there talking about tariffs and how stupid they were. Who else? Who else is comfortable enough, let alone a sports figure, comfortable enough to do that? And so that's the thing that I really admire about Chuck. Like, I mean, we don't always align on stuff, but I mean, TV is better for having had that guy on for the last 30 years.
Can I just jump in for a second, Logan? Because I have this question for Bryan and for Joel, because you guys, you're watching other sports and I don't watch other sports anymore. And it's been so long since I watched other sports on any regular basis. I'm having a hard time remembering if I ever felt this way. But is there any other studio show where it's like, yeah, I actually want to tune in for the pregame or the halftime or the postgame? Like Joel's talking about, like falling asleep in front of it, because we're trying, especially if we live on the East Coast, you're trying to stay awake because you want to be, there's going to be something worthwhile. And if you miss it now, today, okay, fine. There'll be some viral clip on social media tomorrow, and I'll catch it. I won't lose out. But the desire to actually watch a studio show when so many of them are either too formulaic, too dull, too self-serious. There's a lot of that. Guys, is there anything else? Has there been in another sport where it's like, oh, this is must see? I mean, I know college football on ESPN has got a thing going, but I just don't know that we've ever seen this dynamic for this sport or any other.
The only possible answer, and I'll answer for me and Joel on this one, is College Game Day on ESPN.
That's what I figured, yeah.
But the biggest difference is inside the NBA has danger to it. Yep. You don't know what's going to happen on the show. And television doesn't have very much danger. TV pregame shows especially do not have danger. They are scripted. They are terrible. They are not for sports fans. Like we watch that stuff. It's like, I like football. I don't want to watch any of this. This is not necessary to me. This is all worse than 10 minutes of any podcast I could listen to, which would actually tell me much more about the games. Then you watch Inside. It's like, not only do I not know what they're going to say, I don't know when the show's going to end. It's just going to kind of roll into the night, and it may stop. They may do another segment. They may, just kind of get a little punch drunk late in the night and just start saying things that, I mean, that's the part of it. And when we go back to Barkley on TV, like to me, and I know we are contractually obligated to call this a sliding doors moment at the Ringer. The big moment in Barkley's career is in 2000.
Have you seen that movie, Bryan?
I haven't, it turns out.
Okay.
The big moment in Barkley's career in 2000, he could either have gone to NBC or to Turner. They both really, really courted him. I was asking Costas about this on the press box last year, and he couldn't remember why he turned down NBC, because Barkley's really tight with Dick Ebersol. But if he had gone to NBC and been in a much more stilted, programmed pregame environment, and then NBC would lose the contract, maybe he goes to ESPN or something like that, I don't think we get 20% of what we got from Charles Barkley on television.
Yeah. And I think it's even more than that, too. Go ahead, Joe. What were you going to say?
No. I mean, I agree. And I was trying to think if there was another. Bryan, were you a fan of College Football Final when it had Lou Holtz and Mark May on there?
When Reese Davis was dressing like a judge? Yeah.
When Reese Davis, I mean, I kind of thought that show was kind of funny in a way, and I would kind of stay up for it, but that's just because I'm a college football head. But yeah, to your point, don't you think NFL Live, as currently constituted, is, I'm not saying that they are inside the NBA, but they're coming about as close as you can come to doing what they do in terms of the relationships between the people on the panel, the sort of the fun that they have to it, but also they're a little bit more serious, right? But that is about as close as I've seen. But yeah, other than that, I can't think of anything else. Maybe that's a failure on our part. Maybe Baseball Tonight. I don't, when they had Harold on there and everything like that, I felt like that was kind of a fun show too. But it's nothing compares to Inside the NBA.
And the other thing that's so startling, and I'd love to get you guys to talk about this too, since you're more in the minds on this one than Joel and I are, but Inside the NBA is going against every trend in media, not just in the terms of we're dealing with analytics and we're dealing with other ways to think about basketball. but we also have podcasters that actually closely watch the games from week to week, which I think Chuck and company, especially Chuck, would tell you he does not exactly do, or Shaq does not exactly do. There have been so many hilarious moments, but it doesn't matter, right? Like they are grandfathered in. So on the one sense, you have every Ringer podcast headed this way. You have Inside the NBA headed the other way. And it works. It's great despite all that.
I think that's the reason why it works, because it's like nothing we've seen, right? And I think when you do go with the trends, that you end up being a bland show. Like, I just think that you become one of many as opposed to one of one, which is what they are. It's funny because, like, even when you talk about the preparedness of these guys. So Chuck, for instance, right? I've heard both sides of the ledger on Chuck in terms of how much he actually consumes. On one hand, when we're doing the tour and at Techwood, when I'm an intern, they're pointing at the TV that Chuck watches Scandal on before every Inside. And during the games, he has a specific stream for Scandal at the time. And then the other side of it, I'm like, no, Chuck is locked in because he's betting on all these games, right? Like, and that might have been facetious, I don't know. But he's literally betting on these games, so he has to pay attention, right? So on that note, I think that that's the one note on Chuck. But like in terms of why they are successful, I mean, they just seem like part of the family in that way, right? Like not just on television, by the way. Like if you guys know media members, just like how I know media members, everybody has a story about how they went after the game to a hotel that Turner was at, and Chuck is holding court at the bar. Right. I know because I have been at one of these things, and it's like it's a sight to behold. Right. Like Chuck's here. You never know who else is going to come through and pull up. Right. Like it's like a baseball card exhibition of your favorite players that come through, or whether that's media, whether that's just like random actors who are in the area. Right. But I think that they like have this sense of familiarity, and like they also have personalities that like to touch the people. Like Shaq loves to be outside. Kenny loves to be outside, right? Like you see these people in your everyday when you're going to a game. They feel part of the game in a way that other places don't, because I don't feel like they embrace all of the other stuff. The way Inside does.
Well, can I ask you guys a question then? So, like, what do you guys think about Shaq? Like, because obviously, like, he was a very controversial addition. Like, we're doing a lot of hagiography of that show right now, right? And we're like, oh man, it was so great. But I feel like, especially when Shaq first got started, and even as watching it, I was like, ooh, he's holding the ball. He's got to come off the ball. So like, what did you guys think about Shaq? And like, do you think he's actually better, or do you just think they figured out a way to minimize his initial flaws were?
I think it's both. I remember I talked to Shaq during the 2014 All-Star game, and he said like that first year was really hard for him because, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was really hard for him because he had to integrate within a show that wasn't his, and I think you saw that. Like it's just like if you have any big personality joining a team, whether it's basketball, whether it's television, all those things, like he still wants to get his shots up and be him, and he had to figure out how to find his way working within the flow of the offense, and it took him a few years. But I think he's like right in the mix of right now. I think he's as good as he's ever been on television because, like I said, it goes back to that family aspect of it, right? And also, Shaq on television, he's going to be sensitive. That he's going to do pull pranks on himself. All of these things about him, however many years later, so you're used to it.
I mean, think about Shaq's career as a player. Like, he's never been a role player in his life. And on Inside the NBA, he's a role player, and he's coming in from the outside. They're established. Those other three guys are established. I remember when Chris Webber was in the studio there for a while. I don't remember how many games or even years or whatever he did. It seemed like it was a long-ish time where he was the fourth guy for a while. And I thought Webber actually fit him pretty well and was really good there and was much better doing that than he was when he was eventually on games. But he was the only other one I really remembered as being like a fixture there. And I remember when they brought in Shaq, having covered Shaq in LA, and I thought like, all right, Shaq is the life of the party. Shaq is like the center of every room he's ever in. He's going to be the guy that everyone's gravitating toward. He's such a big personality, such a big goofball. And Chuck is just such a huge personality himself. And I was there. They show the clip all the time of those two guys fighting. I covered that game where Shaq ends up kind of like picking up Chuck, and they both topple over and all that.
Was it an earthquake? Was there literal furniture moving?
The ground under the then named Compact Center did rumble.
The Compact Center. That's right.
But so I wasn't sure how that would work. And I do think it was like Shaq was awkward when he first got on that show. There's no question. I think he'd probably even admit that. Like he just didn't know when to speak up or what to say, how long to do his thing. I think he had to find his way. But I think for all the criticism that he gets, that the show gets of it not being granular enough or basketball-y enough or whatever, they're all playing their role. Those are 4 distinct personalities up there. You know exactly what Ernie's role is as, traffic cop / whatever.
TV father.
Father. Yeah, exactly. Like Ernie has his role down to a T, and all he has to, and it doesn't involve something that anybody told him he had to do. He just had to be Ernie freaking Johnson. Like the guy's awesome. Awesome human being, awesome broadcaster. He just has to be him. And Kenny just has to be him, and Chuck just has to be him, and Shaq had to figure out how to be a different version of him where he's not the life of the party at all times. And to play a role. And whatever you may think of what any given soundbite gives you or doesn't, whether it's basketball-y enough or whether it's just them screwing around, it doesn't matter. The show is I don't want to say it's all vibes, but it's like 85% vibes.
I think it created the term all vibes, Howard. I think that show created it. If there was some legal thing of why they couldn't do Inside the NBA, the show should just be named All Vibes.
I will say one thing about Shaq too is when he first got on that show, his delivery was just so different than any other person on televisions. It's a little more offhand. He's not looking into a camera and, and directly addressing a camera
He's threatening bodily harm to his co-host.
Right. To borrow a phrase, we were not familiar with his game. And I think once we all adjusted to that, I think he became part of the family.
I think it's funny too, because like they're always usually guys at a studio desk, you're looking at each other or you're looking at whoever's talking, and you can always see when you have the 4 shot where they're looking at each other, except for Shaq, who's just staring straight ahead. He has his own odd demeanor there where he is a little bit still kind of in his own world. Also, there's nothing quite like seeing Shaq, who now wears glasses all the time, at least when he's on TV, pushing up his glasses periodically with that, like the world's largest finger. It's just like that alone just feels like a Shaq thing. I don't know. That's a really weird detail, but like, I do not ever not notice how many negatives in that sentence when Shaq pushes up his glasses.
I also love like that Shaq makes championship rings of his own, right? Like he doesn't always bring his championship ring. It's like a random 34 that he made. And then every time Chuck says something, he'll put the big ass ring that's not a championship ring. Like, you don't have one of these. You don't have one of these.
I mean, see, that's the funny. My hot take is that I still think Shaq is bad. Like, I think whenever they ask Shaq anything, like it's just like, yeah, well, I think that you got to work it down into the paint. You got to take over the games. You got to dominate. Like Shaq's in-game analysis is always the big guy should be like me, right? And his questions are always bad. Like he's never. I'm sorry, he's never asked a good question. But I think the thing is that the chemistry and the camaraderie is so good that it doesn't really matter. But are you telling me that if they were to replace him with Vince Carter or Draymond, you don't think that show would just be the same or maybe better?
No. And I want to talk about Draymond really quickly. I think that Draymond has done great on television. I will say that, right? But I think that he is at his best, and we've seen this at the conference finals when he's not like going at other players. When he's giving you just straight like hoop talk, he is amazing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I think that sometimes he gets in his own way with that. I think the maturation for Draymond is, and I hope that this ends up happening like now that the crop that he kind of came in with is kind of retiring out. But I hope that the next maturation is him just not trying to settle scores wherever he goes, because I don't know if he's going to go to ESPN or whatever, but because he is so good at the basketball portion of this and telling you why someone is wrong. I remember one time I was in a locker room. I forgot, and Zion was playing. at Duke. And I forgot which game it was. I know the other team was in black, but my memory just really fails me on the team. But I remember it was post game, and for the last 5 possessions of that game, he told everybody in the press room or in the locker room what Zion was going to do and how this game was going to play out. And it was fascinating. And this is in the locker room with some of the best minds that have ever played the game. And you could see his mind just going. And that's what I want to see on television. I want to see him, like, whatever Tony Romo tries to do, Draymond was actually doing it because he was watching film, right? Like, that's what I want to see. And maybe the role for him is maybe play-by-play. But that's what I want to see more of from Draymond going forward, whether it's at Turner or anywhere else.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, and we talked about this a little in the press box, Bryan and I, like, I think it's beneath them when they go after the Rudy Goberts and the Cats or whatever. Like, I'm not into that. Like, I think that's cruel. And I think it's like, they don't have to, their legacies and their stature is such that they don't have to do that, but they engage in sort of that pettiness. And I don't like it. And I hope that they will discontinue that when they move over to ESPN. But to your point, yeah, like if you could get that out of Draymond, but part of it, I'm sure that's what inspires him and makes him the player that he is. He kind of holds onto that stuff in his chest. But I think he's great. I think Draymond is fantastic on there. Like he notable. They've tried a lot of other people. They've had Dwayne Wade there, like you said. They've had Vince. They've had Dwight Howard with much less success. But Dre is great, man. And I would actually like to see him more. Like I would, whenever his career is over, whatever. I feel like they need to bring him in there because he does bring in the analysis. I mean, Kenny does some of that too, but he brings in some of the analysis that people think that panel lacks already.
Well, that's the thing that guys that I'm curious about, and I'm curious, Joel and Bryan, like if you have thoughts on this, like because there was a time when the parlor game was when if and when Chuck ever retires, who replaces him? Oh, okay, Draymond's now in the queue, right? He's in the pipeline, and maybe Draymond becomes the new Chuck. He's got that combination of like gravitas from the way he played and ability to, but also ability to certainly break down the game. Big personality, not afraid to say anything. Okay, cool. He'll slot in there, and then eventually it was like, oh, it looks like Adam Lefko is being tapped to be the eventual new Ernie. And like we were playing this game of like, where does it eventually go? Well, now it's not going to go anywhere. When those guys are done, that show is probably done. But we do have Amazon and NBC coming online, and a bunch of new talent that they're bringing in. And the thing that I'm curious about, and I don't know that anybody has the answer to this, but I'm curious if you guys have thoughts. Like, you can't replicate what Inside the NBA has because it will not have Chuck and Ernie and Shaq and Kenny or whatever, the production staff, everything. There's a chemistry there. There's this whatever ineffable thing. But you can aspire to be some combination of a show that has maybe a little bit more information, a little bit more explanatory for the modern fan, but somehow still has the heart and soul and chemistry and fun and spontaneity. Because if you were any other studio show, you should want to aspire to that. Maybe not all of it, but the vibe part we were talking about earlier, you should want that. Is there any chance that NBC or Amazon gets this right, where we get like the balance of vibes and information? Because that's what I'm kind of hoping for, since these guys are starting from scratch.
It's the single hardest thing to do on television. And I'll piggyback off a point you made, Howard, earlier. People watch television for relationships. They listen to podcasts for relationships. They like the information. They like the analysis. They like you talking about sports that they're into, but they watch for the relationships between the people on the set. That's all it is at the end of the day. That is, and it sounds like, oh, well, that's easy. Let's all be friends and have this great chemistry. Well, it's hard, right? It's really hard. And if you look at Inside, one of the things that always surprises me is Chuck is the most talented person on that show, and he's also the biggest deal on that show, right? He is the straw that stirs the drink. He could talk 10 times as much as he does now if he wanted to, but he doesn't want to, right? If anything, he lays out a lot and waits for the ball to come back to him. That's part of having a relationship. I want this guy to get a touch. I want this guy to get a touch. It doesn't have to all be about me. And again, that is the hardest thing, because one, you got to have people that actually have friendships and care about each other. And two, those TV egos have to be dialed down enough that people are willing to do that. So can Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash do that on Amazon? Maybe. Like, they have a history together. They seem like they could do it. But look, ESPN's been trying to do this for decades, literally decades, and they can't get it right. They cannot create a relationship that makes people want to come back and watch that show.
You said the relationships and friendships, Bryan, and I also piggyback off of that. Like, Barkley's naturally funny. I mean, the reason people gravitate toward him, or you see him holding court in these hotel lobbies or whatever, is because he's a funny person, and that is really, really hard to replicate. Anybody that's ever had to be funny on TV or on air knows how difficult that is. And so I'm going to propose this, and if they use this idea, I'm going to sue them. But no, I'm just joking. But and it really depends on if this person can get his personal life together. Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. I don't necessarily. I don't
How did Paul's
necessarily.
last run on TV go?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, if
Joel, have you been watching Truth After Dark? I don't think he's on that. I don't think he's on his way back, buddy. I don't.
see, that's kind of the thing. I was like, if he can get his life together.
I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
If he could get his life together, because I mean, I don't necessarily listen to their podcasts all the time, but I look at the chemistry that they have. Kevin Garnett is a naturally funny guy. He's also a really smart guy. He's a huge personality. He's got the profile and the stature that other players respect, and like that's the kind of mold of guy that I'm like, oh, if you're trying, nobody's ever going to replace Barkley. It's just not going to happen. But that would be sort of the guy that I would be looking at. And I like Gilbert Arenas, for instance. But I was like, I know that
Gil might be the guy though that you're doing, because
Yeah.
like even KG had a chance at Turner back in the day, and it just didn't work out,
Yeah.
right? Because he was very much KG behind the scenes as he is in the locker room. If you get my drift, right?
Yeah,
He
no.
just, but Gil might. I love what Gil is doing. He might be the next one up in that way. Bryan, I want to get to. I want to make sure we save space for Kenny and Ernie, and I know that that's both. Those are two different orbits within this show. Let's start with Kenny before we get to Ernie. Right. Every time we talk about Kenny, it's in the context of, even they make fun of him, right? Like, he is the one that is probably the most expendable, right? But I also feel like, and I'm not saying that disrespectfully, I love him. I think he's great at part of the show, and I think that gets to the question that I'm going to ask you. What is his impact on this show, right? Because he is a very integral part of what they do and who they are. And if you ask anybody on that panel, they say the show isn't going to do good without Kenny in the fold. What is his role evolved into on that panel?
When you have Barkley chewing scenery, you have to have a center of gravity, or the show doesn't work. You have to have somebody who can take the piss out of Barkley, and that Barkley will take the piss out of him. Kenny, to me, is all of those things, right? If it were just the Charles Barkley show with, a point guard, setting him up, I just don't think it would work like that, because it has to have it. And so that to me is Kenny Smith. I mean, besides the analysis, besides Kenny's pictures, and EJ is another one. I mean, it's funny to me because it took me a long time to really appreciate his talent. And this is somebody who spends way too much of my life thinking about broadcasters. Like, he's different than just about every other studio host. Much less blow-dried, much less TV affect, voice, that kind of thing. It's much more deferential. He's much happier to kind of lurk in the background a little bit and spread the ball around. He's definitely a pass first point guard is in that job, but I think it does similar things to what Kenny does, right? It brings the vibe into the right place, to use the word you guys were using earlier. It creates a center of gravity so that it's not just Charles Barkley just out there saying stuff, Shaq out there saying stuff, right? It's all part of that mix. It's like when we look at any basketball team, it's like, what does that guy do that, two guard who doesn't really average many points but plays good defense? That's the guy. It's kind of like Kenny Smith, the player, in that way.
Yeah. And the other thing about like Ernie is, and I want to go to Joel with this question, is my first reaction to Ernie being white was the same reaction that I had when I found out Robin Thicke was white after Lost Without You came out. Remember when that came out for a minute? He was like, wait, what?
Oh man. Well, yeah, I mean, the wife thing didn't help either. It's like he's married to Paula Patton.
He married to Paula Patton? No, but in that instance, right? He is definitely, when we talk about the NBA players in the NBA life, it's majority black league.
Yep.
And if you are going to be in spaces as a white man, in these types of spaces, there is a level of balance that you have to have, right? And I don't necessarily agree with everything that Ernie has done and said just in that chair. But by and large, he has been a really great ally to the people that his coworkers, and by extension, this league. What do you think that he is? How do you think that he has been over the last few years during his tenure and navigating those waters, right? Because he's also navigated Mike Brown and all of these different issues that have come forward, George Floyd, and with all these things as a host in this environment over the last decade. What do you think that has made him kind of stand out from other guys that are in his position, not only in terms of the studio show, but also, him being a white man?
Well, so I want to say this, and Bryan, kind of touched on it. He's not a buttoned up guy. Like, he sort of seems like he's, a professional broadcaster, but not necessarily a professional broadcaster, right? Like that he went.
Although he can be if he wants to be. Like he can do that when it's required.
He can do it. But we were talking about Tony Reali on Press Box last week about people whose fundamental decency seems to sort of come through the screen, and you look at them and you're like, oh, that seems like a really good dude, and like I wouldn't mind being in a room with him and talking to him, and like if I like that's the kind of person that if he called you to console you after something bad happened, like that seems like he'd be really good at that. That feels like Ernie Johnson to me, and I think that's a big part of it with him, that he just seems like a fundamentally decent guy, and he understands that he's not the star of the show. Like that's why, like, I'm not saying Bob Costas couldn't be Ernie Johnson in this role, right? But it seems like he's totally comfortable letting those guys be the stars and making fun of himself when necessary. And also, I mean, man, he's able to make fun of them back. And I don't know that a lot of players, and that says something about how they feel about him, right? Because a lot of NBA players and professional athletes is like, you can't talk to me because you haven't done anything. You don't know.
Are you saying players or NBA players and athletes are sensitive, Joe? Are you telling me that? Are you breaking that news?
I mean, every now and again you might hear from one, about how what things you said about them, and they may hold a grudge against you, but they are willing to accept that from him. And I think that says a lot about what they think of him and how comfortable he is in a largely black world. I mean, that's the thing, man. Like, it's funny because anytime you ever, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Anytime you ever meet a really cool white guy in the world, you're just like, oh, he must have played basketball. Like, what AAU team were you on? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It was like,
yeah, I thought Howard hooped.
Yeah, right. I'm saying, and it's like, oh, okay. Like he's been on those buses, right? And so that's kind of what Ernie gives to me, and like everybody can't do that. And I mean, again, they have plenty of good hosts that are out there doing that stuff, but you can tell that the respect that the players have for him, that also comes through as well. And so, yeah, like I even though he said he voted for John Kasich, nobody ever really held it against him because he just seems like a fundamentally decent guy. Is that right, Bryan? Is that because we were trying to come up with a list of guys, and we were talking about Ernie, and I was like, oh yeah, Ernie seems like one of those dudes. And maybe the cancer scare maybe added a little humanity to his story as well too. But as soon as we started talking about him, I was like, oh yeah, no, he's one of those guys too.
Totally. I think that's a list. It's Reali, it's SVP over on ESPN, and I think Ernie's in that group 100%.
Where does he put in the pantheon of not play-by-play shows, but pre- and post-game show? Whatever his tier is, where is he at, Bryan? Whatever place you want to put him, where does he belong in the tiers of announcers that we have all known and loved from not only pre- and post-game shows, but sports in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's certainly right up there. Again, like I said, it's a different talent because if we're just thinking of pre and post, you're thinking of like a Chris Fowler, you're thinking of Costas on NFL Live back in the day, Brent Musburger, who's about, a million degrees away from Ernie Johnson on the air. One thing about Ernie too is his dad was a broadcaster at Turner. And when I found second generation broadcasters, of which there are a bunch, one thing they almost all have in common is this calm about television. This just way of being on the air and not feeling like they're on the air at all times. They're not standing on their hind legs. And I just think he'll probably be underrated, even though he's on the best post-pregame studio show of all time. I think he will, just because of the magnetism of Barkley and the just side and how big Barkley is. But man, he's right up there for me. Absolutely.
Whew. I don't want this conversation to end necessarily, but our producers have to do what they got to do. So I'm going to leave I'm going to go down the panel and I'm going to ask you guys. I'm going to start with Howard. Ask like a twofold question. What's your best memory of the show, and what's going to be your lasting impression of this version of the show?
Best memory of the show? I can't narrow it down to one. I appreciate like the comfort food of knowing, especially at this time of year, that when we get to the playoffs, like I actually want to see the gone fishing stuff, right? I can't wait to see who else is going to be photoshopped into the graphic, and to see the guys put on their goofy fishing hats and their fake fishing poles. Like, to me, if you like had to boil down the charm of this show and why we all love it in a single snapshot, it might just be one of those, right? And it's coming. You know what it is. It's a little cheesy. I like the way they've like amped it up over the years, where like now there's like fake water around them. It looks like they're actually on the front of a yacht. Like, how do they do that? That looks like there's real water there. That's fucking cool. Like they care about this shit enough that even the goofiest shit they do, they're like going like, how can we make this like even more convincing? Like we're actually fishing. So I love that about it. Like there's an earnestness that's going along that's overlaid with the absolute, goofiness of it. So there's that. And then the second part of the question was just this version, what?
What's going to be your lasting impression of this version of the show?
I don't know. It might be the same answer. Listen, I'm just going to say on a personal level, like I just appreciate how welcoming and accommodating these guys have always been. When I was with Turner, when I was not with Turner, it doesn't even matter. Like hanging out with them in the trailer at All-Star Weekend in San Francisco, a few minutes with each guy on the record, and then a bunch of time just shooting the shit with all of them. Like they're always just so welcoming. And that goes for Nate Smeltz and Tony Moriali in PR. That goes for like, even when I was working for Bleacher Report and David Levy was running Turner Sports, he was always like for a big time executive who's like 50 steps removed from me, was just a normal dude when you're hanging out shooting the shit. Scooter Vertino, like all these guys, like I always just appreciated, again, whether I was working with them or not, that has always been that ecosystem, that crew, that company has always just been very welcoming and fun to work with, fun to hang out with. So that's my lasting thing.
Joel.
Okay, so it's my favorite memory first. Man, there's a couple. So there's definitely the night that Chris Paul and the Clippers tried to get into the fight with the Rockets, and they clowned. They were like, "Oh, police! Chris Paul's trying to beat me up." That was hilarious. Anything Chuck says about the women in San Antonio, and look, I mean, I will. It's sexist, it's sizist, it's fatphobic, whatever. I acknowledge that, but also I like that he digs in on that. Also, I'm a Rockets fan, so anybody that wants to dig at San Antonio is good with me. In terms of the lasting impressions, you know what I'm always going to be thinking about? I'm going to be thinking about them making fun of Shaq, because I think it really just gets to the bottom of that show. It's just like they like Shaq is the most dominant basketball player of my lifetime. I know you can say whatever you want about Michael Jordan. That dude was incredible, and theoretically one of the scarier people. Like nobody wants to fuck with Shaq. Like nobody wants to get into a fight with Shaq.
Except Chuck, who like dipped him in standard definition television.
That is the thing. That's the thing. So I'm saying, so like they are so willing to take the steam out of that dude. You know what I mean? Like who else has the credibility or the will, the courage, and just sort of like, I don't give a shit. Like we're just having fun up here. And I think that speaks a lot to like the chemistry that they have and just like the fun they were willing to have up there. Like I just love that part. It's a testament to them that they made Shaq seem like we're doing these tributes to that show and everything. And we're like, oh yeah, Shaq was a part of it. And it was like, man, Shaq really ain't said a lot more since he got on there. But the fact that they were willing to welcome him in and make him a part of that show and still have fun with him, like that kind of says a lot to me. That's the kind of stuff that I'm going. I think.
Bryan, I have a bonus question for you after the two questions that I gave you. Like how long? So it's what's your best memory? What's the lasting impression? And how long does this last beyond where we're at right now? How much time do we give this show?
Well, I will add, guys who are not online reading tweets on the air as a just special highlight for me. That always really worked. as did something that is like actually a terrible post-game tradition, which is guys in the studio interviewing the star of the game on the court. Usually pretty miserable, but it really worked with Inside because it felt special.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like they were, laying hands on them and, being like, yes, you had a good game. You are, I, Charles Barkley, I, Shaq, we are recognizing you as having done something special tonight. That was always cool. Lasting memory as a show that was just more of a hang that was great without seemingly trying to be great in a very concentrated, television way, but was better than anything else. How long is it going to be like that? Well, I know Chuck will have already threatened to retire 7 times by the time we finish this podcast because that's what he likes to do. But I think the thing is they like being on television. They like having their say. Now they're going to be on the network that has the finals every year. So think about that, right?
Yeah.
As long as those Disney checks clear, I'm sure we'll have some more negotiation drama. Again, we probably have already had some over the last 45 minutes or so. But as long as that goes, I almost bet against the tide here. I think it's going to go on longer than we even think it is because I think they like that job. They're going to be able to do it their way, and it's going to just sail into the future.
Yeah. Inside the NBA, man. It's going on, but it'll never be the same. Thank you guys so much, man. Brian Curtis, Joel Anderson, Howard motherfucking Beck. Thank you guys for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
We will see you guys next week for Tuesday Vibes, and who the hell knows what the NBA is going to look like by then. So tap in, all the shits. Bye. Must be 21 years and older and present in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 and older and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rghelp.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chet in Connecticut or visit MD Gambling Help in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelpline.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.